Okay, everyone, we're going to talk about Europe now, EU region, um, and I'm showing the numbers for the EU region on the screen here. Um, as you can see, there are a lot of countries with pretty significant size number of selectees. For example, Russia has obviously been capped out at 6,001. Uh, Ukraine and Uzbekistan also, I believe, have been capped out, even though their numbers are not at 6,001 or 6,002, etc. I think these are capped out. They normally do. Those two countries get capped out normally. So there are certainly, those countries are capped. When I talk about capped countries, what I essentially mean is that a country that had so many so many entries from that country that the country meets a cap or a limit during the draw process. Not this. We're not talking about visa issuance. We're talking about during the draw process. And we're not talking about the 7% country cap. We're talking about a draw process cap, and that's where they're artificially limited at some predetermined number. And the number, there's a cap that seems to be on absolute numbers like 6,000, and there seems to be a cap on number of cases as well per country. I don't know whether it's cases or single applicants or something, exactly, but there seems to be some sort of limit that we've always seen, and Ukraine and Uzbekistan are always capped, have been for many years, and Russia has been growing its number as well. If you compare these numbers to 2019, you can see the numbers are significantly different. Russia still had a lot of selectees last year, but the two big countries, as we would normally think of them, had significantly less numbers here. So there was something sort of strange going on there. Turkey had a lot last year. Albania had a lot last year, etc. But if you look at them now, Albania is slightly more than last year. That's interesting. I think that means in Albania that more cases were affected by perhaps the passport rule or something. Not quite sure why there's not a massive increase there, whereas there is a massive increase in Ukraine and Uzbekistan. And other countries, again, Turkey, last year 2,700, this year Turkey is at 2,800. It's sort of somewhat similar. So there has been an increase in selectee numbers. If you look at the statistics for each region, we've got 45,000 selectees this year, and I've boiled that down using the derivative rate to estimate how many cases we'd have, and it should be something around about 23,000 cases. This derivative rate, meaning the number of people per case, is based on 2020 data. So you can see that in this year we've got 23,000 likely cases. Last year we had nearly 16,000 cases. And that just shows how many more selectees there are this year. The quota, of course, of the region is just under 20,000. So we've got 45,000 selectees, just under 20,000 of them can get visas. That's going to be the limit. That number will probably reduce just a little bit because South America is going to get a few more than I show here as a limit, as a quota. So that's going to be pretty interesting. And the other thing I'm showing here is the 55,000 number as being the highest case number. I suspect that's on the low side. It's an estimate. I don't have precise numbers yet. We won't have the SEAC data until January. And in January we'll know exactly what the highest case number is. But the only thing I have to go on in terms of these case numbers is information I receive from you guys. So if you've got a EU case higher than 55,000, I'd certainly like to hear about that. It would be nice to know exactly what we're dealing with. But if you take 55,000, let's say, as the cap, just for now, we'll assume that that's accurate, and 23,000 cases, that's going to mean that we have something like, 30,000 holes where there's a case number with no actual case, right? That's what a hole means. And I have a video and an article that explains how we get holes in the system, how there are holes or gaps between numbers. They're essentially cases which were in the draw process but got disqualified before the announcement of the winners. And so those people who were, perhaps case number EU7, they were disqualified. There's no longer an EU7, let's say. And the person who was selected at that range had some reason, there was something wrong with their application, and so they were pulled out. And not allowed to proceed. It could be because of a duplicate entry or several other things that can cause a disqualification at that stage. And those people, of course, never knew or will never know that they were numbered case number 7, but didn't get their opportunity. They just saw the not selected symbol. So if you've got a case number, you weren't one of those people, right? So no need to worry about whether you've been previously disqualified. It's only cases that were told, they either were not selected, which is the same as someone who is, in a case number much higher. Anyway, what that means is if there's 23,000 cases and you're within here, let's say you're at case number 2,000, you don't have, excuse me, you don't have 2,000 cases in front of you. You have some number less than 2,000 cases in front of you, right? Same thing at 20,000. At 20,000, you don't have 20,000 or 19,999 cases in front of you. You have some number less than that. And as you can see, there are actually more holes than there are cases. Now, the holes are not uniformly distributed across the whole range of the 55,000. It goes down in sort of steps, and the steps are to do with the countries which are limited in the way that I was just discussing. So 2020 doesn't show it very well, but I'm going to show you some old data. There you go. Excuse me. So the steps I'm talking about, I often refer to these as cliffs. If we look at the 2018 data here, this is EU, you can see that the blue color represents holes, and the other colors represents actual cases. So we can see here there's roughly about 20%, 22% holes for the first sort of 11,000 cases. And then at some point between 11 and 12,000, let's say, it drops down so there are more holes for a period of time until, again, it drops down at this point, right? So actually there seems to be one level here, another level here, another level here, and a fourth level here. That means that there were 1, 2, 3, 4 countries which were limited and hit a brick wall, or hit a point where they no longer got selectees past a certain number. So if, for example, one of those countries, and this is probably incorrect, but let's say Uzbekistan or Ukraine was the first the first country which was limited. So at something between 11 and 12,000 in DV 2018, let's say, Ukraine, right? Ukraine had enough selectees by that time to hit the artificial limit that was imposed upon them during the draw. And after that point, any case from Ukraine would have been just pulled out or disqualified. And so it creates this sort of cliff effect where the numbers drop and then continue at the new lower level, and there are more holes, right? So it means that any case from that limited country is concentrated in the first, in this case, 12,000 numbers. We're going to see something similar to that in DV 2021, certainly on Russia because it's been limited, and probably on Uzbekistan and Ukraine as well. All right, and when I say certainly on Russia, if you have a look at other countries, you can see Algeria, Sudan 6001, Algeria 6001, Egypt 6002. 6,000 is kind of a magic number that you can see in other regions as well. You see the same thing in Iran. That's not by coincidence. It's a feature of the program that is limiting those countries at no more than a 6,000 number for including all the applicants. There's actually two limits in place, in my opinion, in my understanding. One is the 6,000 number that's been implemented this year, which is an absolute number on all the selectees. And obviously, if you're case number 5,999 and the next case is two people, it's a husband and wife, then you get to case number 6,001, even though you wanted to limit that at 6,000. That's why you get 6,001 on 6,002 as opposed to an exact 6,000, because the next case you pick and you say that's going to be my final case because we're at 6,000 or we're about to hit 6,000. That final case happens to have two people or three people, and that's why we get to that number, which is one or two numbers above 6,000. But 6,000 is the limit. The other type of limit that there is to do with number of cases, and that means that we can have two countries such as Uzbekistan and Ukraine. Both of these countries may have been limited, but they hit a case number limit rather than a selectee number limit. And so these two countries are almost certainly limited as well as Russia. Okay? Okay, so those countries, at least three of them, will be limited. I don't think there's any other country, just looking through. Albania may have been limited if they had a very low number of married applicants, but I think that's probably not the case. So I think we're going to see three countries being limited and therefore condensed in the early number ranges. So it would mean that if you're a case number from Russia, at some point, Russia numbers are going to stop being issued or stop being seen, whereas other countries will continue into the higher number ranges, whether that's 55,000 or 58,000 or whatever that number is. Right? So that's one thing that we need to understand. The other thing that we need to understand is that there are some countries which are blocked this year because of some bans. Now, we've got a couple of different bans going on, obviously. We have the ban that all countries are under, which is I refer to as the immigrant ban, which is the ban that is causing no cases to be issued right now. That ban is due to continue until the end of this year, December 31st. That ban is also being challenged in court, and the hearing for that is on August 27th. So, sometime just either on the 27th or a few days after, we could see. It's possible that we could see that ban successfully challenged and blocked. Therefore, but if the challenge isn't successful, then the ban will continue until the end of the year, right? And in that case, we lose the first 3 months of processing of the DV2021 year, and we would have to process all these cases in 9 months rather than 12. That obviously stresses the system. It stresses the chances of all these people being processed, even if the numbers are possible, right? So that's one factor that we need to consider. The lawsuit on the 27th, therefore, is important to us. The other factor that we need to consider, as I mentioned earlier, is the travel ban. The travel ban affects Kyrgyzstan and these 2,130 people. That country is banned because of the travel ban itself. I think it's Proclamation 13780. Executive Order 137080. I was looking at earlier because it lists the countries I refer to this, and so we can see the countries restricted in that way, and we can see that Kyrgyzstan is entry of all Kyrgyzstani nationals is suspended, right? And as well as some of these other countries. Okay, so in that situation, those 2,000 people can't be processed currently. But if Trump loses the election in November, then we would have a new president in January, and the new president, if we have a new president, it would be Biden, and he's likely to remove that travel ban, and I would think he would do that pretty quickly. He has said, and the administration have said that they would do that. Okay. So in that case, those 2,000 applicants would become available or would become able to process their cases, whereas they're currently blocked. And that means that instead of having the 43,000, let's say, that we have at the moment, we would be back to having the full 45,000 number of selectees being able to process their cases. That will have an impact. That will have a bit of an impact on the system. So the other thing that is in force at the moment is the Schengen area ban. Now there are 26 countries, and some of them are here, that are banned by being a member of the Schengen area, banned by the USA, and the embassies at the moment are taking the position that they cannot issue visas to any people from those countries, because those people in those countries, either in the Schengen area or in fact UK and Ireland, people in those countries can't travel to the USA because they're under a suspension order, which was implemented by Trump earlier this year because of COVID. Okay, so that also is another factor that's going to be heavily impacting Europe, and again, depending on the timing with the with the ban that's due to end at the end of the year, depending on what happens with COVID, depending on what happens with Trump and the election, that may or may not be a factor as well, right? So there's lots of things going on, and the final, obviously the pandemic itself, you could see an uptick, and in fact there is an uptick in cases in some of these countries that had gained control over the pandemic pretty well. Some of these countries have reopened, and as they've reopened, there's been additional cases found, and additional contagion of the pandemic. That could get to be a bad enough situation that an embassy in the country might say, actually, this isn't safe for us to be open. And so they could, at any time, any of the embassies in this country could decide locally to shut down operations, and that could affect us too. It could certainly affect things. The last factor that I mentioned in the main video was the passport rule. I think in general people in Europe have probably got passports. In general, it's fairly common to travel. There will be some countries where people were not able to enter the lottery because they didn't have a passport, etc. Or they entered the lottery, they didn't have a passport, but they selected one of the exceptions. In that final case, those people are likely to be denied at interview, and so that could increase the denial rates, the failure rates we see at interview. But I don't think it's going to be a huge factor in Europe, probably not as big as it would be in Africa, for example. So a lot of things going on. Fundamentally, 45,000 people for 20,000 visas is too many people, too many selectees. And fundamentally, we're losing time on, we've at least lost October. We may lose November and December. And if Trump wins, frankly, who knows what will happen, because, he's an awful person. So it's yet to be seen what happens. And for that reason, I don't think it's wise that anybody tries to predict what case numbers are safe, or what case numbers are in danger, or where the cap will be, or which of these applicants aren't going to make it, etc. So what I will say is that there's probably a sort of completely ridiculous number under which you just shouldn't be asking whether you're safe or not, because mathematically it would be impossible to fill 20,000 visas from such a low number. And I think that number is probably around about the sort of 25,000 level, maybe 30,000. But once you get above 30,000, there is some risk. At 30, 35,000, there's some risk. At 35 to 40 and 45,000, there's more risk. Once we get up into the 50,000 plus numbers, there could be quite considerable risk of those case numbers not getting a chance to be interviewed. But there's so many factors going on. Who knows? Who knows how many people are going to respond? How many people are going to be denied? Whether additional countries are going to be banned by Trump, or or what happens in the election. Perhaps that could go either way. There's so much going on. Right, so I strongly suggest just sort of wait and see is the best answer. If you've got a case number under 25,000, please don't even bother me asking, are you safe? Of course you're safe. If you've got numbers above that, I'm not going to be able to give you much of an answer apart from wait and see. Right, and that really is a good answer to give. It's a sensible way to look at things. 25, 30,000. You need to just wait and see what happens. And at 30,000 to 40,000 again, wait and see. You may have a chance, but it's not for sure you have a chance. There may be a cut-off, and we might be surprised how early that comes. But on the other hand, with such an unusual year, who on earth knows, right? I don't think anybody does. And so, even if you're at 55,000 or something, I really don't suggest you give up or lose hope now. But I think it would be sensible to hold off filing your DS260 for now. I don't think I would be suggesting you do that until we know a little bit more about the political situation, the pandemic, until we got more data from the SEAC system, which we'll have in January, so we can see where the gaps really happen, and also what the highest case numbers are. All right, so that's how I would approach things if I were you. There is absolutely no harm if you're a high case number, by the way. If you're at case number 55,000 or even 40,000, there's no harm in delaying your submission of your DS260 and documents until after January. Let's say you can submit in March, April, possibly even May, and you can still be processed before the end of the year. So there's absolutely no reason to be sort of getting worried and fretting about having to get your DS260 in. And there's actually some good reasons to not submit your DS260 if you've got a high case number. So please just hold off of submitting your DS260 if you've got a high case number. Use some common sense and just sort of wait and see. Adopt a little bit of a wait and see attitude. Okay. All right. I'm hoping that's answered most of the questions for you. It's going to be an unusual year, without a doubt. You're going to have questions, I'm sure. If you do have questions, you can enter those questions under this YouTube video, but it is easier for me to answer questions on my blog at BritSimonSays.com. And so ideally enter them there. You'll get better responses there. You'll get faster responses. I answer questions on my blog every day. I don't answer questions on YouTube every day because they're harder to keep track of on YouTube. And it's just easier for me to answer those questions on BritSimonSays.com. Having said that, almost every question that I've been asked has been asked before. Right, so I've got a frequently asked questions link. You can check out answers that I've given people for many of the commonly asked questions. I've got hundreds of articles where I've explained things about how to process your case, etc. I've got, you name it. I've got articles that cover the situation. If you just use the search system over there, if you use Google and do things like, add the word BritSimon as you type in Google, you go to Google, add BritSimon, and then whatever is your query. If I've written something about that, you'll see those articles coming up in the search results. So, whatever question you have, try that first. But if you need to ask a question, feel free, go ahead and do that. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Smash the like button below. Please do subscribe to the channel as well so that you'll get information. You'll notice that I usually put things on BritSimonSays.com, but there are some aspects, some topics that I find easier to explain on video, and they only come on video. So do subscribe to the YouTube videos as well, and just to make sure you're getting all of the information you can get. All right, I hope that was helpful for you, and I hope you enjoyed that, and let me know with the questions you have. All right, keep well, everyone. Bye-bye.